to the cloud. Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. We're here to hear one of my favorite speakers, Nathan Kipnis. Not only is he a very wise, sustainable national authority, he's also a friend, and he's also very funny. So I love his jokes. I think that's one of the fun parts about his presentation. And I'm trying to, there we go. You're spotlighted. Sorry. Okay, so there's Nathan Kipnis, everybody. Good morning, Nate.
Good morning. Thank you for that introduction, Wendy. And I hope everyone's having a good time at the conference today. Today, my topic is the AIA's Framework for Design Excellence, taking design to the ultimate level. And what I want to do today is go over the past definition of what great design was and how it's evolving to the 21st century, and then show you some good examples of that. So in the past, these two examples probably showcase what good design was, what design excellence was. It was basically just about aesthetics. It's how the building looked, how it was designed, the proportions, the rhythm, the materials, which is all great, but that's just scratching the surface of what great design can be. And these really are only about aesthetics. So they may have performance that is not very good from an energy standpoint. The materials have no good environmental qualities, etc. So that's the primary thing that's changing, is a whole wider range of what makes up good design. And here's another example. This is Thomas Jefferson's Monticello in Virginia. And this has been actually shown as great design because it's been captured on the back of a nickel. But it is a really good example. It highlights really classical design. However, there's some aspects of this that aren't so great. For example, it was partially built by slaves. And there's many other issues with this building. But this does kind of encapsulate what the past definition of great design was. And we've had quite a year, obviously, last year in 2020 with the global pandemic and the impacts that that's had on all of our professions and on how we design. We've also seen racial justice come to the forefront. Obviously, this has been a long-term problem, and it really kind of bubbled up big time last year. And we're seeing that being requested in designs to respond to this. And the last one I want to highlight is climate change, which has been ongoing as well for quite a while. On the upper left, you're seeing some forest fires. We have a branch office in Boulder, and Boulder had a couple different forest fires this year. And the bottom two pictures are from the current events going on in Texas. The one on the left is the freezing cold, blowing out some water lines and causing unintended indoor water features. So we've got that going on. And in the bottom right picture, probably not the best way to showcase your kitchen design. This is someone boiling water or making food with the only source of heat he's got in the house, and trying to keep his feet warm at the same time. The image on the right is a graphic that shows the difference that climate change has caused from 2011 to 2020 versus a baseline from the mid-50s to 1980. So the road to excellence has taken quite a long time to get to where we're at. And I want to go over a couple different programs before I get to how the AIA is addressing it. So these are some programs that emphasize different factors. So the first one is the 2030 commitment, which I've been involved with for quite a while. The goal here is to design buildings so that they're carbon neutral, net zero carbon at 2030. So currently we want to design buildings that are 80% better than a 2003 baseline building. So we want to be 80% better now, in 2025 90%, and then carbon neutral in 2030. And the 2030 commitment program helps architects to get to that point. It's a recording tool so that they can report the results and keep track of it and try and make progress year to year. And this is one of the charts that was in the most recent by the numbers reporting on the 2030 commitment. And it helps dispel the notion that by doing efficient buildings, that's going to somehow negatively impact the U.S. GDP. The 2030 challenge started in 2006. The AIA adopted it as their program in 2008. And you can see at that point, everything was pretty much bunched up. And over the program's time period, you see the GDP rising over 26%, while CO2 emissions declined 21%. So a 47% delta there. And obviously, you can have efficient buildings and still have the GDP go up. Another program is from the Department of Energy. They have their Zero Home program, which the most famous part is the Net Zero Ready program. And basically, there's 3 steps to this. Step 1 is optimizing the building. And you want to have the most efficient building you can have before you start putting renewable energy on it. So the idea is to make the enclosure as appropriately sized as possible, put energy efficient equipment in, and that includes appliances and lighting. So you want to optimize it first, then you go to the next step, which is protection. So this is having good indoor air quality, ensuring comfort in the space, and providing water protection. So those are really critical things to do. And then we get to the last one, which is optimizing future ready, which is resilient design. So it's the resilience aspect, making sure it can handle future and current environmental impacts and be able to handle that easily. And then seeing how the codes are shaping up and making sure the house fits into that, and then making it either solar ready or actually going ahead and installing the solar. So these things all work towards sustainability, resilience, and health. And you can see this in this path, how things are moving forward. So code minimum is just the bare bones building. You know we can do better than that, but there's a code minimum. And then we have high performance homes that have their energy performance is much better. And then we get to zero energy ready. In other words, it's ready to get solar panels added to get it to be zero net energy, but we haven't done that yet. But we've got in place the roof area, the orientation, space in the mechanical room, everything's set for that to happen. And then once that's installed, it's zero net energy building. And then the next one is really kind of the ultimate goal. And actually, before I get to that, zero net energy means it produces as much energy on an annual basis as it uses during that year. So it may produce more in the summer because there's more sun and the panels produce more energy, and then in the winter you're running a deficit, but it balances out over the course of a year. Zero net carbon isn't just energy, it's the carbon footprint of the building as well. So that has to do with the materials in the building. Some materials are high in carbon, such as concrete, steel, and glass, which unfortunately are the fun things that we all like to build buildings out of. But there's ways to have the materials actually sequester carbon. So wood, for example, is taking carbon out of the air, out of the atmosphere, and embedding it into a building material. And then the ultimate goal is to be net positive carbon, where your building is actually taking out more carbon than it's using to be built and to operate. And so this program is sustainability, resilience, and health. So some specific other programs are the Passivhaus Institute of the US, which their whole thing is performance. They are ultra high performance. It is making the envelope super tight, bringing in air in a controlled fashion, taking into account the solar aspects of the building, and then offsetting that, of course, with on-site renewables on the roof, most likely. So their statements are that it's unmatched comfort, superb indoor air quality, an extremely resilient building, and the reason is this is passive survivability. If the power goes out, these buildings are so efficient that it's likely that you could heat a reasonably sized house with just a 100-watt hair dryer. And I know that sounds wild, but that's how tight these buildings really are. And they claim that it's the best path to net zero and net positive buildings, and I believe that because this is getting the shell really tight is really one of the key things, and then bringing the air in a safe and manageable fashion. The next program I want to talk about is the WELL standard. The WELL standard is totally focused on building healthy interiors, healthy buildings. And so some of these, of their 7 concepts, are pretty obvious, but some of them are newer. So air and water, that's obvious, but nourishment is an interesting one. And I've been in some buildings where they have taken out all the candy dishes and replaced them with fruits, and they label the nutritional content so that everyone can see it. And I was also in another building where we were doing a proposal, and they had candy everywhere. And one of the guys just came up to me, one of the workers, the employees, and just said, "Get these out of here. I've gained 10 pounds since I've started working here." So this is obviously an issue, and they address it in the WELL standard. Lighting, which can play a huge impact on your health and well-being and productivity. Fitness, another interesting one. I saw online a building that had different exercise equipment mounted on the wall, hula hoops, everything. And if you wanted to during the day, you just take down jump ropes or whatever you want and do a little quick workout and get back to work. And the last 2, comfort and mind. So peace of mind there. So this is all about health, and a really good concept. And I would strongly recommend, if anyone's interested in this, to check this out, because I think this is going to be the big one that's growing in the future. I think understanding how healthy buildings are is really a key concept. The last one that I want to talk about is the Living Building Challenge. And this one is kind of all of them combined. It really is kind of epic in how it goes about this. So you look at the chart, this graphic diagram on the right, showing code having negative environmental impacts. If you just meet code, your building's still doing some pretty bad things. Green, kind of in quotes, is kind of nebulous, but it's just less bad. That's the way we think of it. High performance is working your way up that chart. And sustainable literally means the balance point between positive and negative. So it's sustainably neutral. And then the Living Building Challenge tries to move this all to the positive impacts. And it does this on this, I believe it's 20 petals on the flower. You see this image on the left. And they have to do with things like energy, equity, health, beauty, which is very unusual in these programs, water, site, and materials. And this one really is a serious one. So for example, the water use on a building that's a Living Building Challenge certified building, you can fill up the building with water once, and then you get all your water coming in from rainwater capture. Some of them have to do with producing all your own power on site. Some of the petals have to do with food production. So if you're out in the farmland, you grow all your food, and as you move inward towards a city, you grow fractions of your food on site. So really serious program. It's fascinating to see the examples that have been done to date with this program, and I think it's growing quite a bit. They also have a component for justice. So they rate different products and different services with this chart, and this is the end certificate that you would get. So they're into everything in this program, really comprehensive. So a cautionary slide here is to not overdo it. So you don't want to overly focus on just one aspect. So here's a building that's totally focused on energy efficiency, and I'm sure this thing works great. I wouldn't want to live in it. This thing is horrible looking. So again, just use common sense with this, of course. So that brings us to the AIA's role in all of this moving forward. Back even prior to what I'm showing here, in 2013, they did an organizational scan of where they were at and tried to see what they were deficient in. And they started working on all this stuff way back in 2013. In 2018, the AIA adopted their ethical standards for practice, and they've incorporated into their contracts that architects need to discuss sustainability with clients. That's a requirement in the canons of ethics in the AIA, and it's now memorialized in the contract. So you have to do that if you're a member of the AIA. And then in 2019, the AIA announced their big move towards sustainable environmental stewardship. And what this started to talk about was they were making a quantum leap in financing and putting money behind this. So the concept was they were going to take their funds that they currently were using towards sustainability and increase it by tenfold, which was unbelievable. I don't think they're quite doing that, but it is still a order of magnitude shift towards that, which is epic. And then in 2019, there was a resolution at the National Conference for Urgent and Sustained Climate Action, which passed overwhelmingly, something like 93% to 7. You wonder who these 7% are that didn't approve it, but we've seen this percent before at the AIA. It's also the exact same percent of people that, members of the AIA that understand climate change. So interesting, I think as a profession, that's got to be one of the highest percentages of understanding of the current situation. In 2019, the board ratified the climate resolution and adopted the Committee on the Environment's top 10 as the framework for design excellence. The Committee on the Environment annually has a program where firms submit their best of best project, and these are the 10 best environmental and sustainable projects of the year. This program's been around for decades. It really is the ultimate goal, ultimate award that you can get from the AIA for a sustainable project. And the board thought that the framework that they use, the 10 categories, should just become the framework for design excellence. It's not just about aesthetics. It's about how the building performs, and it's about health, and it's about wellness, and about equity. I'll go over all that in detail in just a bit. And then in 2020, the board adopted the AIA's Climate Action Plan. And in June of last year, the framework was approved by the board. And so now we see this up at the AIA headquarters. We are designing a sustainable, healthy, equitable world together. So they've really focused on this and made this their key thing now that the AIA is all about. And they have this kind of presentation, which gives me goosebumps every time I look at this, but it's really great. So I'll just read it. One site, countless challenges, a looming deadline, 7.5 billion clients. This is the ultimate project. This is why we're here. It's time to show what design can do. It's time for the biggest design organization in the world to take on the biggest design problem in the world. From this moment forward, AIA and its members dedicate ourselves to designing a healthy, sustainable, and equitable world together. So that just really is great and very succinct, I think. So here's the framework, and let's go through it. And I want to caution before I get into this that I can just see some of you rolling your eyes at like, oh my God, there's 10 categories we got to deal with here. Yes, there are 10 categories to this. You don't need to do all of them. I just think that the key thing here is to bring this to your awareness, to bring it to your consciousness, and to think about it for every project and try and make progress in these and understand that design excellence is not just about aesthetics. I mean, that's something we've been hardwired to think about as designers. We have to move beyond that. The times dictate that. So here's the framework. The framework represents the defining principles of good design with these 10 statements, and they are mainly about zero carbon, equitable, resilient, and healthy built environment components. And it's intended to be accessible and relevant for every architect, every client, and every project, regardless of size, typology, or aspiration. So in theory, this should work for every project. It's not a big firm thing. It's not a small firm thing. It's not for certain building types only. It's not for certain budgets. So hopefully that all makes sense, and we'll go through them now in detail. So the first one up is design for integration. Good design elevates any project, no matter how small, with a thoughtful process that delivers both beauty and function and balance. It is the element that binds all the principles together with a big idea. And what I've done on these, there's 3 or 4 bullet points on each one. I'm just going to talk about one. How will the project engage the senses and connect people to place? So some of these are a little nebulous. This one is a little bit kind of big picture, but I still think it's worth looking into and thinking about that. You know, each site has its own unique aspects, and you can certainly capture that in the design. And each place is different. So when you design in New Mexico compared to Miami Beach, compared to North Dakota, you're going to have different results. So I think that's part of this. This one is designed for equitable communities. Design solutions affect more than the client and current occupants. Good design positively impacts future occupants and the larger community. This building in the background, by the way, is from Ledham Métis Stacy Architects, and they're based out of San Francisco. This is an affordable housing project. So the point here is, who might this project be forgetting? How can the design process and outcome remove barriers and promote inclusion and social equity, particularly with respect to vulnerable communities? You know, one of the things we do on projects is we get clients wanting radiant driveway heating. And I know this is like, how can this be about equitable communities? We don't do that because it uses way too much energy. It's ridiculous how much it uses. And I would much rather have the owner pay someone locally to shovel and keep the money in the community and give jobs to people. And I also think the same way about prefab buildings, that I'd rather have these buildings stick built by contractors. That's just me, but that's one aspect of this. I mean, there's a lot of things about equitable communities, but just wherever you can think of it, try and utilize that thought. This one is designed for ecosystems. Good design mutually benefits human and non-human inhabitants. How can the design support the ecological health of its place over time? So, you know, in the city, you might not have aspects of a site that are worth kind of laser focusing on, but in this instance, this example, obviously there's some water aspects that should be maintained, some runoff, and some ecological habitat that shouldn't just be cleared out. So that has to do a lot with the landscape design, and I think on a lot of sites this should certainly be looked at. This next one is designed for water. Good design conserves and improves the quality of water as a precious resource. How does the project use water wisely, addressing efficiency and consumption while matching water quality to appropriate use? So water is a tricky one. Water is good and water is bad. We want to kind of manage the crazy rainfalls that we're starting to see, these bigger rain events. So that might manifest itself in oversized gutters and downspouts, and then thinking, where does that water go when it's coming off the building? Are there areas in the landscape that can absorb that, you know, water thirsty planting areas? And then using water wisely internally inside the building, so water efficient fixtures and things like that. Now, having said that, we always ask clients, you know, do you want to do this or this? It's always a fork in the road, and we want to like make them aware of their decisions. And so sometimes we might say, you know, hey, let's use really efficient water fixtures in the shower. And a client might go, you know what? I want 6 shower heads in here. That's fine. They understand the pros and cons of that decision, and they've made a logical choice based on that. So that's what we strive for, is to give everyone input at every decision point and let them make a decision based on that. The next one is design for economy. Good design adds value for owners, occupants, community, and planet, regardless of project size and budget. So the point here is, how will the design choices balance first cost versus long-term value? A lot of times we deal with developers, and developers primarily think of first cost. So that's always tricky to get them to think outside of that. That's just not in their wheelhouse. They're a spreadsheet oriented decision-making client, and it's a little tricky. But what we can do is try and give them some aspects in the design where things can be added later at next to no cost. So they might not want to put solar panels on right away. They might not want to put a battery backup system in, but we can pre-wire for that with very inexpensive conduit into the right places, make the mechanical room a little larger to handle all this stuff so that we know this is all coming. And honestly, if you don't do this on a building, your owner 5 or 10 years down the line is going to be pretty disappointed when they try and sell it, because we know all these things are coming. This is not news. It's, you know, people laughed about electric cars 10 years ago, like, there's not any cars out and they're not really going to ever be here. And now we see what's happening. It's ballooning month by month. There's more choices coming out. Same thing with solar power. The price has fallen so much. Same thing, batteries now are starting to see that same cost reduction. So we know these things are all coming. Moving towards all electric buildings is another one where we know this is where everything is headed. Several cities now have banned natural gas. And so this is yet another thing to keep in mind when you're looking at a project. And on this one, design for energy, which is a really big one, obviously something we are very focused on. Good design reduces energy use and eliminates dependence on fossil fuels while improving building performance, function, comfort, and enjoyment. How can the project exceed building code efficiency standards to approach net zero energy and net zero carbon? So, you know, looking at the example in the background, this is a building with a certain type of roof. It's got this roof that's oriented perfectly south and doesn't have any obstructions for solar panels. This particular building is net positive by about 25%, I think, 20-25%. We produce 120% of the power required over the course of a year. And you're going to see building types that don't work for this kind of start to disappear. Or I should say building styles. So like if you could imagine putting dormers all over this would ruin the ability to have the solar panels. So we're going to see those type of designs probably start to disappear or be reduced significantly. And then as far as the carbon, that has to do with some of the building materials. I'll talk about that in a minute. Design for well-being. Good design supports health and well-being for all people, considering physical, mental, and emotional effects on building occupants in the surrounding community. How can the design encourage a healthy lifestyle? And I mentioned that some of those buildings I've seen where they have the fruits and vegetables out, they have workout equipment in reach so people can use it. There's designs that kind of make people walk around more. You can also have those standing desks and things like that. And this also has to do with the quality of the light. So natural daylighting is a really good one. And if you can't get natural daylighting, circadian rhythm lighting fixtures are a really good option as well. Good quality water, all these things, the air quality itself. So this is something, and I mentioned before that this is going to be a big thing moving forward. I would highly recommend trying to look into this particular one in a lot of detail, especially if you're an interior designer. Design for resources. Good design depends on informed material selection, balancing priorities to achieve durable, safe, and healthy projects with an equitable, sustainable supply chain to minimize possible negative impacts to the planet. So how are materials and products selected and designed to reduce embodied carbon and environmental impacts while enhancing building performance? There are some interesting charts you can look at that show the carbon footprint of different materials. So the ones that are really intense are, steel, glass, and concrete, the exact things architects love to use. And things like wood captures CO2 from the air and sequesters that carbon in the building product itself and in the structure. So there's certain materials that have low or negative carbon footprints and others that have really high ones. So there's different types of insulation. Some of the insulations are petroleum based and have a very high environmental footprint. while others actually sequester carbon. So if you have cellulose, for example, that's taking a wood product and using it as insulation. So it's that kind of thinking that you need to look at. The other thing that we're seeing with resources, with materials, is how do they come apart? How do they become reused at the end of life? So instead of laminating materials, you might have materials that are screwed together so that they can be unscrewed when you're demoing the building later, and it can be much more easily recycled. Design for change. Adaptability, resilience, and reuse are essential to good design, which seeks to enhance usability, functionality, and value over time. How is the project designed for adaptation to anticipate future uses or changing markets? How does the project address passive survivability and or livability? So this is that thought that I mentioned before about buildings having to adapt to changing climate. We know temperatures are changing, we know rainfall amounts are changing, wind, the frequency of high impact storms is increasing. So the buildings need to be designed for that, how it currently is and how we think it's going to be. When we design something, there are climate data that we use. There's different types that we can get, including some that show what the anticipated climate will be 30 years out and 50 years out. It's hard to just design to what's here now. It's a much better thought to try and think a little out in the future because we know it's all coming. The last one here is design for discovery. Every project presents a unique opportunity to apply lessons learned from previous projects and gather information to refine the design process. What strategies promote a sense of discovery and delight? So this is the part I like to think about that's the fun part of design. One of the things we like to do, if someone has a birthday, we might try and set up something in the house where the sunlight comes through on their birthday and hits a certain area. You know, something like that that is just really fun, has nothing to do with anything else, but people love it. I think that that's really great. And capturing even just the changing time of day with daylighting and doing it in a smart way is another good strategy. So let's talk about the actual framework itself and how to integrate it. The AIA at their website, aia.org /design excellence, has the description of this, and then it has little boxes for all 10 of the different components, and you can click on those and get information homing in on each one of them. This one, design for equitable communities, and then you can go into each of the topics here. I'm going to talk about this in a little more detail, but at the top you're going to see best practices, high impact, resources, and projects. So this is just like it says, it talks about what are the best practices for each of these options. The high impact one is really good because I know when you're dealing with something new and complex, what is the one thing you can do that makes a big impact? So that's what this is going to answer, that one highlight there. And then resources, obviously giving you some more places to do a deep dive, and then some case studies under projects. And so, as I mentioned, these are these 4 topics that you can click on in each of the different topics for this one, equitable communities. And so I want to show some examples now. We do some equitable community work. The one on the top is actually the closest project to our office. It is literally right around the corner. The building had previously been a grocery store, and I'm doing air quotes here. It was a grocery store, but it was also a significant drug dealing site. And several years ago, it got shut down, and this building was recently purchased. Meals on Wheels helps people in need with food, and they deliver it out to them. Just a really great organization, really happy I can be of service to them. The bottom 2 projects here are some very early green projects we were involved with. The one in the middle is the Green Homes for Chicago competition. It was an international design competition in 1999 that we won. This was an affordable 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath home on the south side. Done very economically, but still very energy efficient. The building on the right is part of the Green Bungalow Initiative that was done in 2001. There were 4 buildings done on one block, each one with a different program, different materials that were sustainable and green, and different energy systems. And then this was opened up to the public to show them examples, and then it's also online to show that as well. The picture on the bottom left, kind of a funny one, me showing Mayor Daley some solar angle thing, and I'm not sure he's buying it. Funny picture there. So some actual buildings, a little more current. This one is Attainable and Sustainable Home that we did in Evanston, just a little under 2,000 square feet on the main 2 floors, a 3-bedroom, 3.5 bath home. Kind of interesting that this is a starter home and it's homing in on $1 million, and that's unfortunately where we're currently at. But this one had 3 certifications that we were going for: the Energy Star certification, the DOE Zero Net Ready certification. It has solar panels on it. It has room for a lot more. It's all set up to be net zero. Hopefully down the line they'll do that. And then it also has the EPA's Indoor Air Plus certification. So the cautionary tale of this one, as this was a young couple and a starter home, they just got tapped out at the end of the project, and they did everything we wanted. A very tight building, highly insulated, all electric is what we were striving for, and solar panels and a battery backup. This is the first project that we actually have an actual battery in place now. But they did not want to do the all-electric mechanical system. Would have been a mini split system, and they just couldn't do it. It was $7,000 more. That's all it was. And by doing that one thing, it went from basically 66% better than baseline to 48%. It was really heartbreaking, but the ductwork's in place. They can replace those units with all electric down the line, but that's obviously not going to happen for 20 years or so. This is the house when it was being ready to move into. Obviously I need to get some better pictures, but you can see the solar panels on the garage. There's room on the main house for quite a bit more. We used a combination of cement fiberboard panels and siding. And then you can see on the upper right image, we also used what looks like stone. That's a cement fiberboard stone material, stone-looking material from Nichiha. This house has really great natural daylighting and really great natural ventilation as well. This home is a new home that we're designing up in the mountains of Boulder. It will be a net zero home. It will also be off-grid, which we have designed one other but not had it built. This one will be built. It is in construction documents right now. The interesting thing about this is if you're building in Boulder, any new home or any major renovation that's over 3,000 square feet has to be net zero by code. So I think that's fascinating. You're going to see more cities start to adopt that, but Boulder is definitely at the forefront of that. Some of the interesting features on this house, you can see the solar panel set popped up in the middle, kind of a butterfly roof that's got an amazing view looking down the mountain. That piece of horizontal design element that is on the left side, that's a light shelf that bounces the light deep into the space, bounces off the top of that and then re-reflects it to the ceiling. Also provides shade in the summer for the lower glass. Part of this glass is going to be triple glazed. The part where we can get shades is going to use an insulated shade system, so we won't need the triple glazing there. But this is really a fascinating house, and it's all based on solar angles. So the floor plan is set up. You can see solar noon is south is to the left on this diagram. So the orange arrow on the left goes all the way through, and at the end of this decreasing hallway is a rotunda with a circular skylight on it. So every day at noon, the sun will cast a light through the circular skylight and hit the cylinder that the rotunda is and create a parabola, a parabolic arc there. So every day you're going to get that. It'll be in a different location, but that's really neat that it's tagged like that. And then the shape of the building is also set up by the winter solstice sunrise and the summer solstice sunrise. And then we have the winter solstice sunrise going down that hall by the foyer, and it will illuminate that just on the winter solstice sunrise. So really neat house. And we also, you can see some of the exterior views here on the right, and then the interior on the left. You can see on the right, the entry area starts that light shelf system, so it's all integrated into that. And on the interior, we have a sunken living room and a fireplace that's an orb, and then this hallway that goes down that I mentioned before. That's based on this hallway that James Terrell designed, who is an environmental artist, and we're kind of using that as inspiration. And the last project I want to show is the Lakefront solar home in Lake Zurich. So I showed a smaller home and a, different variations, but I want to make sure I point out that we can also do this on a luxury home. So this is energy efficient, it's resilient, it has wellness integrated into it, has a lot of these fun aspects to it. The image on the right shows the front with the solar panels, and that is not a bad photo. It is slightly curved. The garage and the roof are both curved slightly. And then the back, which many people think is the front when they do homes like this, that is looking out to the lake. So really, really great. We've got skylights at the top for natural daylighting and natural ventilation. And this is the interior, which is just really kind of a fun interior, great space. And then two other images of that showing the, again, the skylights and the great view out. Those are some Sierra Pacific windows looking out to the lake. And then we have a fireplace for a resilient backup. We normally don't put a fireplace in a high performance home, but this is a tightly sealed outside combustion air, so it actually produces heat. So if you ever really, really needed it, you could produce heat in the house in that fashion. So that's the overview, and I wanted to go over for you the AIA's Framework for Design Excellence. I really would like you to take a look at this and to integrate this into your work. I'm really excited about it, and thank you very much, and I'm ready for some questions.